It's time to push the panic button.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Baseball Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves baseball talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra and Batiste. Alongside me is Jarvis Davis, and this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. The Atlanta Baseball Party is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So is it time to send help for that fifth spot in the rotation? And will the campaign to get at least one Brave to be selected for All-Star going to work? We'll talk about it. But first, let's chop it up about the Braves taking another L to a cellar dweller. So Jarvis, Austin Riley and Sean Murphy, granted, they hit back-to-back home runs for the Braves. But the Braves lost again last night because they couldn't come up with a hit with runners in scoring position. Then Jorge Soler, I guess it was nice to be back in his old stomping grounds because he and Lamont Wade Jr. hit back-to-back home runs. Of course, the Braves eventually took a 5-3 loss to the San Francisco Giants. So here's what Riley had to say post-game. Each night, it just seems like when we're in those situations, we're right there and just can't get that big hit to build that momentum and keep going for whatever reason. We just got to continue to push forward and work every day. But Jarvis, to you, is this now a big enough sample size to panic?
Yes, I'm in panic mode right now because I've tried my best to try to sit up here and say, "Oh, okay, they're gonna get out of it. They got the guys to do it." But when you start see some of those guys who expect to do it to start the season, those guys start falling off, start getting injured, and then you got Luke Williams and Zach Short. See, I don't even barely even know the man's name. You got all these people you just throwing in here to try to fill in and try to help out. It just not, the numbers just don't add up. And when you think about being in those moments, I'm sure those guys are thinking about it too when they're at that plate. You try not to, obviously, because you know how big the mental aspect of playing in this league makes, helps you be whether it can make or break you, right? So I think that overall, this is something that has been a problem, and this is something that is going to be a problem until they try to figure out how to fix this joint.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I am in panic mode as well because at this point, every month, it was the same conversation, right? In April, you kind of said, okay, small sample size. They've got to reset since they lost Spencer Strider. And that is more than just losing a pitcher, that's losing your ace and all that it means for him to be the guy who would always probably go 3 up, 3 down, right? At least through 1, 2, or 3 innings, striking out pitchers and giving the Braves then an opportunity to get up and get ahead as far as runs go. But you don't have that guy. So you give them a little grace in April. And then comes May and you say, okay, they're kind of catching their breath. It's going to take them a minute because, hey, you lose Ronald Acuna Jr. Then you really have to reset because now you're like, oh my God, we got to figure out the leadoff guy. Okay, then you lose Michael Harris the second and you're like, okay, got to reset a leadoff guy again. But here's the thing. You got that. Oddly enough, you actually have that solved in Jared Kelenic. Right. But I'm panicking because the outcome, no matter what the Braves have done, no matter what maladies have befallen them, it's still the same result. And that's losing. And that is that up and down nature, right? Because, all right, we'll give him a little pass. June was a month where they went 7 of 8, right around that mid-June stretch.
Right.
It's the Baltimore Orioles. They were able to get a win to avoid a sweep. They beat the Tampa Bay Rays, also the Detroit Tigers. But let's face it, Rays, middling, Tigers, not so much, not good at all. But it was up and down after that. So they end up finishing June 14-13 because they had a 5-game losing streak. They dropped games, Jarvis. And this is what makes me panic. This is what makes me concerned. You drop games, yes, to the Orioles, but to the Washington Nationals. That's when you start to panic. And then even last night, dropping that game to the Giants. Granted, the Giants are on a little bit of a good stretch run. I believe they've won 5 of their last 6 But for the most part, they're not a good team. They're in fourth place in their own division. So
Right.
that's, to me, that's what happens because Jarvis, I don't recall us saying a whole lot last season, and not to compare it. I know it's a different season, but I don't recall us saying a lot last season that the Braves lost to teams that they were supposed to win against. When we said, okay, you're supposed to beat that team, you're supposed to win that series, they did it. This year, how many times, Jarvis, have they gone into a series against a much worse team, below average team, and you said, ooh, can we just make sure we don't get swept? Ooh, I hope the Braves win this series. But that's happened too many times this season.
Yeah, the mindset is off, right? Like we talked about the mindset and how Jared Kelnick has basically taken over that leadoff spot. Even when and we'll talk about this a little bit later, as far as Michael Harris, potentially looking good, probably potentially maybe on his way back. I'm not putting Michael Harris back in that leadoff spot because I
Yeah.
feel like Jared Kelnick is really settled in, so you can appreciate that throughout these struggles. But the Braves are currently 9 games behind the Philadelphia Phillies, like you talked about having the best record in baseball, and then also they're I think the one squivel of light, even if that's a word, I make up words too. I get down sometimes. They're only they're 3 games. They have 3-game lead over the Cardinals, and as far as the wild card spot goes, that's cool. But
Mhm.
like I said, I feel like it's time to hit the panic button. And I'm talking to Alex Anthopoulos right now because we can't continue to look at this team and the one stat that I was looking at this morning and that kind of really just clearly defines where the Braves are. I think they're like 18th with runners in scoring position. And that's been their issue
Yeah.
consistently because the
Yeah.
pitching staff has been amazing. They have
Mhm.
three
Yeah.
guys who have legitimate chances of making this all-star team. So doesn't that sound familiar? Right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
feel like that aspect of the game, the pitching part, I feel like that's something that I'm always willing to give the benefit of the doubt, but like that stops today as far as with these guys with these bats because it was so frustrating. I was at the game last night, T, and I'm sitting there watching Jared Kelnick strike out, and I see Adam Duvall with a chance in the ninth inning to do something. I know he had to walk off against the Pirates. Okay, that's cool, but that dude has been awful outside
Yeah.
of that, right? So it's hard watching these guys, continue to come up short in these big moments. So yeah, it's panic time for me.
And this is not a situation where we can talk about. Remember, also, we started off in the beginning of the season saying, it's okay, it's okay. The Braves started off in 2021 with an extremely slow start. And then all of a sudden they caught fire
Right.
because Alex Anthopoulos at that time was trying to decide whether he was going to be a buyer or a seller, whether this was a wave the white flag situation, or whether it was a situation where they should go for it. Well, in June, they started to pick up steam. Alex Anthopoulos decided to go for it,
Ronald
picked up
Acuna was out for the season,
exactly. Yeah,
It's
so
like so
mhm,
weird how this is playing
it's
out.
really familiar, except that we haven't gotten to that point,
Mm,
but we're saying we're panicking a little bit because it's different. At that moment in June, in 2021, we were saying, ooh, there's some possibility. We see some uptick. Okay, so Alex Anthopoulos goes out. He gets Jock Peterson, and all of a sudden, Jock Peterson, Jorge Soler, and all these guys just come together to make this crazy World Series run. I feel like right now you got to decide, Alex Anthopoulos, is there any way that this team with a few pieces would still be in position to make a run? Or is this a season where it's just been too many injuries, too many man down situations where you really don't have the opportunity to kind of come back and do something? And listen, you've got the Philadelphia Phillies, not just leading the NL East or into the National League, they have the best record in Major League
mhm.
Baseball. They are coming to town this weekend, and you have an opportunity there. Okay. Bryce Harper, Schwarber, Real Muto,
So,
not
yeah,
in the lineup this weekend. You
damn.
might want to try to sweep them or at least win the series to gain some ground back because otherwise, again, you're looking at the Braves continuing to squander opportunities. I mean, when is the last time we said no Bryce Harper, no Kyle Schwarber, and no JT Real Muto, among others. Those are
Those the
just
boppers. Those are the boppers.
yes. So you have so in other words, your pitching staff, which is already solid, has an opportunity there because some of the guys that kill it at the plate for the Phillies are not going to be there. So Braves bats, your bats are the ones that are going to have to show up and show out this weekend because the Phillies kind of are giving you a gift. You just have to take advantage of it. So when we come back, we'll talk about whether or not it's time up and going deep. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by Booking.com and also Game Time. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival's city. Now, you know that I am a Braves fan, but also a little bit of a New York Yankees fan. I know it's not a rivalry per se, but that still might be a good look for you. That's an opportunity. But I'll tell you this much. I don't know if I would necessarily go to Philadelphia because of what the Phillies are doing now, but a trip to DC to the district right around this time, man, listen, that would be a beautiful thing. So from hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. And why not take a chance on the Nats? I mean, I know the Braves had a tough time against them in June, but the next go round in the district might be a beautiful thing, and it is absolutely beautiful there in the summer. So you can book today on Booking.com or on the site or in the Booking.com app. Again, that is Booking.com. Our Atlanta Baseball Party is also brought to you by Game Time. Now, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And think about this. They have these zone deals where you can save even more when you choose a section, but you let Game Time choose the seats. And there's also ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And they also have a lowest price guarantee. So it's going to either be the lowest price or Game Time will credit you 110% of the price, right? The difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms apply, but create an account, redeem LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lower prices are guaranteed. So Jarvis Ronaldo Lopez has been one of the more consistent pitchers on this Braves pitching staff this season. And really that pitching staff as a whole has probably been the most consistent part of the Braves squad this entire season. He has a major league leading ERA of 1.83, but of course we know he had an early exit in the series opener against the Giants. Unfortunately, just not his night. He pitched for 4 1/3 innings. He allowed 4 hits, 2 runs, and 2 earned runs, but 4 walks, which is a little uncharacteristic of him. And he did strike out 6, however. So when you look at his box score, if you will, as a whole, do you think that last night is cause for concern?
I wouldn't say last night is a cause for concern, but if you add his previous start into
Yeah.
that equation too, where he had 4 walks and he had 4 walks against the Giants as well,
Yep.
you start to think about, okay, all right, this is the first time being a starter since what, 2019, and
Mhm.
we obviously know that being a starter and being a reliever are two totally different worlds, right? I remember going back where when they signed him, for what, 3 years? I mean, 3 years for $30 million. You start to
Mhm.
think about, oh, okay, all right, nice. That's a nice piece chunk of change for
Yeah.
a reliever, right? But hey, it's pretty solid. So Alex Anthopoulos sees something in him, and then we got the announcement that they were going to stretch him out in the spring. I'm like, oh, okay, he's going to be
Yeah.
the 5th starter, and now here we are. He's not the 5th starter. he's the third guy. Like he's that third guy solidified, right? You know, if a playoff series would have started today, he'd be the third guy penciled in it as far as being, as a starter. So
Mhm.
I feel like there is some concern because he hasn't been pitching on, regular rotations, right? Every fifth day, right? But he's been on having 6 days of rest, and Chris Sale has been going to that as well. So you think that the Braves have already had a plan for this, right? Whatever this is, like hopefully this isn't a trend.
Yes.
Hopefully it's a couple aberration, right? So, but I think we'll see. Because like you said, mentioned earlier, the Phillies are coming in town, so this is going to be something to keep an eye on because he will be pitching. He is scheduled to pitch this weekend on regular rest, and it's only the second time he's done that this season.
Yeah, and coming off of this game, and like you said, on the regular 5-day schedule of rest, he pitched, threw out 101 pitches. And that's a lot in 4 1/3 innings, right?
Right.
Now, at least in that last game against St. Louis, he only pitched through 87 pitches in 5 innings. But then you go back, the one before that, 5 innings, just 93 pitches, 6 innings, 91 pitches. So that pitch count has slowly been upticking, except for that one game against the Cardinals. And I think that's a little bit of a concern as well. And now you start wondering if this is going to start taxing the bullpen as you wait for guys like potentially Tyler Matzik to get back. How much of a stress and a strain is it going to be on them as they are supposed to be working their way back into the bullpen? So, yeah, I think there are a couple of things. They're not a big cause for concern, by the way, but a little bit of a cause for concern because of the number of walks over the last couple of games, because the pitch count got a little bit higher than it had been in a while, and also because he's not pitching as many innings. Didn't give up a lot of runs per se,
Right.
but pitching a lot of innings. So now you're starting to look at the bullpen and saying, "Uh-oh, you're about to tax those guys." And they've been kind of up and down this season. A lot of it has been due to injury as well, but you definitely don't want to get to the point and place where you're taxing them too soon. But you may not have a choice because right now, all the Braves can do and have been doing is continue to rotate guys into that fifth spot in the pitching rotation. And with what we've seen out of Reynaldo Lopez, and you kind of get a little nervous about whether or not you're going to see the same out of Chris Sale because he's not pitched a full season of baseball in like 5 years, it does beg the question of have we finally got to the point where it's time to go out and get a guy?
Absolutely. Like that sense of urgency, it has to be up right now. Like Alex Anthopoulos, if I wish we had a camera in his house or wherever he is right now as we recording this show. Like, hey man, I need you to be on that phone, Jack, because at the end of the day, I'm really at a point where I know this has been a trend with the Braves with bringing up young guys, trying them out, trying to see what's going on. But it just for me, I just don't think that they're in a space to be able to do that because the only reason why that you are I'm sorry, 9 games over 500 at this point because of your pitching. So
Yeah.
you have to make sure that is okay or
Mhm.
that is solidified. Like you need to be solidified 1 through 5. Now, Charlie Morton, he may go off and have a bad start, but I'm
Right.
okay with that because he's a vet. I know what to expect from him. But
Yeah.
that fifth spot, the swelling box of the world, like I understand that he has some stuff, right?
Mhm.
That's Brian Sticker's favorite word. He
Right.
has stuff, but it's just he always has though that
Yep.
one inning where he just loses it. He just
Yeah.
loses it, and that's going to happen with young pitchers.
Yeah.
I think Alex Anthopoulos needs to come to the conclusion that when it comes to stuff like that and running these young guys out there, he has to say to himself, can we afford to have those hiccups?
Yeah.
And the answer to that right now is no.
Yeah, I think that he also is probably waiting until you get just a little bit deeper in the season to see who's truly a buyer and who's truly a seller and kind of who he can negotiate with, because we know that the Braves don't like to give up a whole heck of a lot to get anybody, whether
True.
that is in the offseason in free agency or at the trade deadline. So I think he's kind of waiting to see whether or not there's a team out there that's going to go wholesale. There always is one at the trade deadline every single year, but whether or not that team includes somebody who could be not just put in the fifth spot for the rotation, but also maybe somebody who can get you there all the way through the rest of the season. Because, yeah, we know that there are some guys, like you said, that you can kind of throw in there. Schwellenbach was kind of thrown in there. And then you may be getting AJ Smith-Shawver back at some point, but you're kind of not sure what's going to happen. And then, and again, not to put a bad omen out there or not to sound negative, but what if somebody else goes down? And I'm not talking about down for the season as in Spencer Strider. I'm talking about what if another pitcher has to hit the 10-day IL? What if a pitcher has to hit the 60-day IL? So I think we've seen a rash of injuries with this team, enough to the point where you can say, hey, it might be time, at least like you said, to begin working the phones so that when a team decides that it's going to be a seller, then you're right in position as a buyer. Now, speaking of Smith-Shawver, of course, he began a rehab assignment with high A Rome that'll actually start today. He, of course, has been sidelined with that oblique strain since May 23rd. Now, it might be being Captain Obvious by saying this, but how important will it be to get him back, regardless of if Anthopoulos goes out and gets a guy?
I mean, I don't mind him being an option to bring up just in case the fifth guy that they're bringing that they trade for is he's a little struggling a little bit, or somebody gets hurt, like Charlie Morton at the age of 40. God forbid he gets hurt, and we know that number that I just threw out, yeah, that could potentially happen, like you mentioned. So I think that Alex Anthopoulos' mindset should not change regardless of whether AJ Smith-Shawver does. What if he comes up and pitches great, that's fine. But I think before leading up to that, when he comes back, you need to start lining those ducks up and saying, hey, who can I call? Like the little Chicago White Sox, have some guys that that can be potentially be available. We know that they're the worst team in the Major League Baseball, and they actually lost to them too. So yeah, hey guys, one of those guys that help beat us. Yeah, can we get those? We'll tell you a couple of prospects here and there. So yeah, regardless of whether or not AJ Smith-Shawver is healthy and comes back and starts to look like the guy that we saw last year and potentially being one of those guys you can throw in that rotation, he still needs to do what he needs to do and bring in a vet guy that can help solidify this starting rotation while this offense continues to struggle.
Well, we know there's one guy who's been maybe the most consistent Brave of all, but he might be under the radar. Will a campaign to get at least that Brave to be selected for All-Star work? We'll talk about it in the stretch. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with 5 million active members plus. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, Prize Picks, it'll just allow you to go against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the action today with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community. You can now win also up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Now, with the finals over, the hoops action doesn't actually have to stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is still heating up with stars like Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark to make names for themselves because, of course, they also just made the All-Star team and they've been breaking records left and right their entire rookie season. But there's also Breanna Stewart and Asia Wilson, 2 front runners for MVP. You can go with up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. And Prize Picks, of course, is available in more than 30 states across the country, California, Texas, and right here in Georgia. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So, Jarvis, before we get to a potential All-Star, I wanted to talk about Michael Harris II. He is making progress. He, of course, the 2022 Rookie of the Year, has been doing baseball activities the last couple of days, just working back against that hamstring strain that he suffered a few weeks ago before the Braves outing against the Giants on Tuesday. In fact, MH2 was seen throwing on the field. So how big would it be to get him back in the fold? And to your earlier point, where do you possibly see him once they get him back? Where do you possibly see him landing in the rotation, in the batting order?
Wow, that is a really good question. I think you got to start him out at the bottom, right? Maybe that
Yeah.
7 spot, right? Or 6 or 7 spot,
Yeah.
because we
Since he's been in
understand.
the ninth spot, right?
Say it again?
It's been a minute since he's been in that ninth spot, right?
Right, yeah. I
Yeah.
I think we know that he flourished in that, right? Early on, he
Yeah.
was, almost like a second leadoff hitter, right?
Yes.
Coming in front of, Ronald Acuna Jr. So, man, it feels good to say his name. But but when you think about what Michael Harris brings to the table, you understand that you can put him out there in center field and have no concerns. And then him coming back, actually, you get to move Jared Kelenic back to left field, and whoever they trade for, you could put in right field and have and have Adam Duvall as a nice guy who can pinch hit for you, coming off the bench, right? So I think that the any good news is good news when you're talking about a player of his caliber coming back and being that guy you can not have to worry about in the lineup and out in the baseball field. So yeah, this is good to hear, because when we initially heard it, like, oh yeah, he'll be gone. They were like, all right, we ain't got no timetable. But
Yeah.
how those soft tissue injuries are. Like, it's all about mostly about pain tolerance, right? How much can you endure and how much can you perform while you're enduring through whatever pain that you can that pain threshold that you have.
Yeah, and that's a tough one because when you're playing in the outfield and you have to close gaps the way that Michael Harris II has to close gaps, the way he did close
That's why
gaps.
he's an asset, right?
Exactly. So that's the thing that's going to be challenging, like you said, to see what the pain tolerance level is. But thank God for Jared Kelenic, because he's the one guy who, even in the beginning of the season, when he wasn't giving them much at the plate, his defense has been lights out since Ben.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. And now that he's found a nice little home in the leadoff position, we think we've got him squared away and good to go, which, like you said, when you bring back Michael Harris II, maybe give them a complimentary piece in the outfield who hopefully can be a complimentary piece at the plate as well. And maybe Michael Harris II can pick up where he left off, because he was starting to kind of get his swing back before he went down. Maybe, again, maybe that'll be an opportunity for Alex Anthopoulos to say, okay, a piece is back in place. So maybe this is where we can make our run to a wild card spot, or maybe this is where we can make our run towards the division. I think a lot of that will kind of play itself out in the next few weeks, as far as he goes, as far as AJ Smith-Shawver goes, and what it is that Alex Anthopoulos will need to do, and how many positions he'll need to be aggressive about getting some fillers, some real fillers, not just, like you said, unfortunate fillers like maybe what Adam Duvall has or hasn't been able to do, but maybe some guys
Mostly
who,
hasn't.
yeah, right. Unfortunately, mostly hasn't behaved that, because we know that there have been many times where we've
Yes,
said
yes.
Adam Duvall was that guy, and so grateful to have him back with this team. But ultimately, for what they need now from the plate more than anything else, you just got to get a guy who can give you something more at the plate, which Michael Harris II hopefully will be able to do when he gets back. Now, a guy that's been giving his all, Jesse Chavez. Braves absolutely love him. The fans love him. And his teammates are actually waging a campaign for the righty to be selected for the July 16th All-Star game, which of course is happening in Arlington. Some of them even wore little politically campaign style t-shirts Tuesday
Mhm.
during pregame workouts to kind of low-key say that, hey, we think Jesse deserves to get the nod to go to Arlington for All-Star. What say you?
Oh, come on now. He's 40 years old. He's never made the All-Star team before. And when you think about having a 1.51 ERA, that just, it just makes the most sense in the world, because we understand how many eyeballs are on the Braves. And of course that helps, right?
Yeah.
For him to be, it's hard not to get behind a guy like that, right? Because he's 40. He's not supposed to be playing or pitching right now. And it seems like, all the stints that he's had with the Braves, and he'll go somewhere else, get
Yep.
DFA'd, and then next thing you know, he on the street, and then like, hey, Braves, like, hey, want to come back and pitch? Sure, I'll come back. And then he just goes crazy, right? The man has a 1.51 ERA. He had
Yeah.
a 1.56 ERA last year, before he got hurt, and we know that put him down for a while. So he was even joking about, he was like, yeah, I was doing this well last year, but unfortunately, I got my leg broke, right? So you think about, from that standpoint, it's kind of like, all right, he wants to put together a full season of,
Yeah.
of health, right? And given what he's done since he's been here with the Braves, you gotta say, hey, like as many as his teammates can come out and say this is the guy, this guy
Yeah.
needs to be in here, the
Yeah.
better, because I know he definitely has my vote.
Yeah. And you look at, like you said, his ERA going back to May, 1.08, 7 strikeouts in the month. Then you go to June, 1.46, 9 strikeouts in the month. And then you go to June rather, that was May, then April. You go to June,
Mhm.
a 0.87 ERA and 12 strikeouts. So he's consistently gotten better and really made the case for himself to be an all-star. And it really would be nice because after last year, where pretty much an entire team went in as an all-star,
Right.
it would be really difficult to not see any Braves because this team still does have pieces. This team still does have players that are deserving of the nod. And you just kind of hope that a guy like Jesse Chavez can have that kind of story. I don't want to say storybook ending because we hope this isn't the end for him, but at least storybook start to this season. Listen, we appreciate you guys for stopping by the Atlanta Baseball Party. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we're free and available wherever you download your podcasts. Enjoy your 4th of July.